And we are live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on business ethics, which is hosted by Millpark Education School of Commerce. My name is Somila Ntinge, and I'm from the marketing team. For those of you who are new on our platform, just a few things to note. We've got an interactive chat box, which is on the right hand side of the screen. Please pop in your highs, tell us where you're watching from, how the weather is. We would love to hear from you. We also have polls running. This will enable us to contact you. Please let us know by voting yes, and we'll be in contact. We'll also have polls running throughout the presentation. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your views on the questions that will be posed. We also have an Ask a Question box. This is where you can pop in all your questions, and Daniel and Cyril will be answering those later on in our webinar. And now I will hand over to Cyril, who will go through our ACM qualification with you guys. Over to you, Cyril.
Thank you, Samila. Good morning, everyone. Cyril Francis is the name. I'm an academic at Millpark Education. And the purpose of this webinar this morning has a dual function. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to one of the qualifications that we offer at Millpark Education, a proud partner of the Stadio Group of Higher Education. And then secondly, to expose you to one of the qualification modules. So over to the next slide. So the qualification under the microscope this morning is the Advanced Certificate in Management, called the ACM. Now, the ACM is a step up from the HCM. We also offer a higher certificate in management, which is an entry-level management qualification to expose school leavers and also employees in the workplace about the importance and the significance of management training. So the advanced certificate then is an intermediary qualification for management training, and it focuses on all the techniques and tools required by managers on the middle level or middle band of management within the workplace. So if we go to the next slide, the Advanced Certificate in Management is an accredited qualification according to the South African Qualifications Authority, SAQA. It's got an ID number, as you can see from the slide, 90665. It is a level 6 qualification, and you need 120 credits to qualify for this specific qualification. The outcomes of this program is threefolded. So first of all, we provide a broad overview of the importance of people within the organization. So we look at all the aspects from the recruitment of individuals, the training of individuals, the placing of individuals, induction in the workplace, and also the core legislation protecting people in the workplace. Then we also look at all the strategic principles of leadership and how leadership and management is married together and how the two works together for the betterment of the company as well as the country as a whole. We also look at new ways of doing things within the workplace, and we focus our attention on a very topical aspect in the workplace currently called project management. And these are the three outcomes of the Advanced Certificate in Management. So if we go to the next slide, these are the 6 modules that you will do in a qualification such as this. There are 4 compulsory components and there are 2 electives. So the compulsory component starts off with management and leadership. And this is a very interesting module because it allows you to delve into the aspects of management and how this is related to leadership as well. Because you find a lot of managers who lack leadership ability and skills. And here you're seeing a marriage of the two. The second module deals with business ethics, and that is going to be our discussion for this morning as well. The importance of business ethics and how managers in the workplace must conduct themselves in an ethical manner. Then we're also going to look at the advanced people management, where we unpacked the significance of people within the workplace, like I've already said, and you go through that whole process, linking up what we do in the workplace to what the requirements are according to legislation in South Africa. Then we do a very important subject too called finance for managers, because as a manager, you need to understand finance as well. You need to know what the budget is. You need to know how to roll out the budget. You need to know how to control a budget within the workplace. And therefore, as a manager, it is crucial for you to understand the significance and the foundation of a budget. Then also, you do a subject called project management. And like I said, all new innovations in the workplace currently is driven via projects. So there's a whole project team, and it gives people the insight and also the ability to participate in different things and new things within the workplace. And then the last module for this specific qualification is what we call integrated business strategies. Now, in the HCM program, we do the fundamentals of strategic management. And in this module, we step it up to a higher level where we not only just look at the principles of strategic management, but we also look at report writing and business writing on how you present your strategies within the workplace and how they are implemented. So these are the important subjects of the qualification for the advanced certificate in management. Next slide. So at this point, it is my privilege to introduce to you our speaker this morning. Our speaker this morning is Daniel Makonsane. He is a PhD candidate from the University of the Northwest. He is a manager in risk management, and it is our pleasure this morning and my honor to welcome Daniel. He's also known as Danny, and I don't know whether he can sing that song of Danny Boy. Maybe at the end of our discussion this morning, he can allude to that. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm handing you over to Danny, and he is going to take us on a journey on the importance and the significance of business ethics. Now, you know, this is such a critical discussion today because as the tabloids unfold this morning, we are looking at the situation where our past president, who has been implicated as a result of a lack of business ethics within not the workplace, but in the broader context of the South African government, and now he is facing jail time. And all along he said, I would like to have my day in court. He had his day in court. And he also alluded on numerous platforms that he is prepared to go to jail. But we leave it at that. I'm going to hand you over now. Daniel, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Cyril. Let me take this opportunity to say thank you to Milpark Education for giving me this platform. And I'll also thank Somila, Michaela, as well as Petunia for organizing this webinar. On the next slide, we just want to discuss this topic of ethical behavior in business ethics, given taking into consideration the current pandemic that we are faced with. I just want to highlight that I do not have all the answers to all the questions, and hence we are having a discussion of business ethics in COVID-19. So what you can expect from today's discussion is just to lay a foundation on the definition of what do we think ethics are and what do we think ethical business is. Secondly, looking at the concept of what I call stress test. Then I have a few questions that I ask, which will guide us in terms of the discussion as it unfolds. Questions like, is it a necessary evil or a silent friend? COVID-19 and the effect that it has on business ethics. Then I look at the differences between what is important at the moment. Is it ethical culture or is it the profit? Since we know that the aim of any business is to make profit, then we look at it ethical dilemma. Now, based on the discussion that we're going to have, after all that, how do we move forward? What is the next step that we're going to do? So I'm going to start on the next slide describing what is ethics. So when the word ethics comes up, a lot of words that relates to character, to personality pops up. Words like justice, words like prosperity, right, wrong, honor, integrity, values, and all that. So I must also claim that there are a number of definitions when you go through literature and different theories that describes what are ethics. So combining all this, I came up with this definition which says that it is a system of moral principles that guides your personal standard to be able to differentiate between what is right and what is wrong. However, since we are going to have this discussion based on a business perspective, so the discourse of this discussion is going to be based on business ethics. The same principle applies. It is just a system governed by the organizational values to say that we as a business, this is what we stand for. This is our values. How does our stakeholders, our customers, our consumers, our employees, everyone that we are involved with, how do they see us? What are our values? What do we stand for? Because that's what also attracts people to be part of the organization, attracts people to work hand in hand with the organization. So after those values have been created, they also serve as what we call a moral yardstick to say that if I want to join this company and I want to be part of this organization, it means that I'm also contributing to these values, or these values also abide to my own personal standard, which I said is an ethic on its own. Most of the time, and this has been seen lately when we got into the pandemic, most of the ethical conduct is embedded in the laws, rules and regulations, as well as the policies of the company. However, it is not easy to measure that if it's part of the policy and not implemented. Remember that any policy or any framework is good in the paper until it's tested. So that's what we'll be looking at. In the next slide, I am asking, or I allude more on the issue of stress testing. What COVID-19 has done, I think for me, it is what we call an ethical stress test. Remember now, the aim of any business is to make profit. And in the process of making that profit, they interact with a number of stakeholders. Then you have your society. Your society includes your own employees because they have individual values and individual goals. It includes the society that you are participating or you are basing your business in. And then secondly, the group of stakeholders are businesses. Other businesses that are in the same sector, other businesses that you partake in. And then lastly, the government, which sets the rules and regulations and all that. However, how do we balance between making profit and making sure that what we do is ethical? I think that has been the most critical question since we embarked on COVID-19 and saw how that affected a number of companies. However, what COVID-19 has also done is that it presented us with opportunities to see how strong that ethical culture is and whether are we prepared to maintain the one that we have. Things like the questions that employees will ask themselves will be like, who do I tell this if I cannot meet my employees on a coffee break, or that casual encounter that we normally have with each other? It's no longer there unless it is specifically organized. However, there are also signals that we see which come as a pressure to the leaders because of this crisis. Now, the most important thing that happened when this COVID-19 came was that when things are stable, it is so easy to do the right things. But when everything is upside down and the global economy and the world at large is faced with a crisis, that's when we test the true leadership. That's when good and true leadership stand out. So this is a call to say that ethical behavior, it is not only a policy, because what we have seen is that policy is not reality. What is written in the policies has been thoroughly tested. What has been seen, written down, and been said by a lot of leaders in their presentations has been tested by reality. I love what Cyril introduced, what Cyril said when he was introducing the topic, talking about the current unfolding situation, a political situation in our country where the former president ethical standpoint has been thoroughly tested as well. So it is very important that we also take into consideration that what we say when things are right can be really tested when things are upside down. So policy, it's not reality from a business point perspective. But now, what are we really doing at the moment? What is important to a company? Ethics and money. It's a battle that is continuing, and it's a battle that needs us to be very, very proactive in how we address that situation. On the next slide, I am also asking another question, which says that, is COVID-19 a necessary evil or a silent friend? Because now, a lot of questions came. Employees are losing their jobs, companies are liquidating, and then what is important at the moment? Is it my individual goal, or is it taking forward the goals and the vision of the company that I work for? Companies cannot pay their employees, but their expectation is that the output and the quality of work should still be the same. How is that possible? So we have to come up with what we call it's a balancing situation, whereby now we have to go back to the values that each company has developed to say that, are these values really a reflection of what we stand for? Because if one works for a company which shares the same values, the same principle, the same ethical standard as their own, doing a work, even if it's not that much rewarded, will bring so much non-economical satisfaction to that individual. However, we must also take into consideration that in the beginning of, or the start of any company, as I alluded before, the aim is to make profit. So we've also seen with reports and standards and surveys that were done aimed at the pandemic and its effect on business, that good ethics does not equate to good business. We've seen a number of very good companies with good asset records, with good reputation and good standards and good employees and good structures. They failed during COVID, and some of them really liquidated. So it brings a question of saying that, are we really where we should be? So how do we balance this? How do we make sure that going forward, based on what we have, we will be able to proceed nicely? So I just want you guys to help me fill up the form there. When you look at the polls, there's a poll that says, do you believe that the destruction as a result of COVID-19 poses an ethical business risk? On the polls, can you please vote there? I just want to have as many votes as possible so that we can have a discussion on this in the next slide. Can you please get the votes there? The question says that, do you believe that disruption as a result of COVID-19 poses a risk to ethical conduct? It seems like a number of people who are voting are saying yes. And I believe it is a very good answer. When you look at the report that was done by Ernst & Young late last year, they were doing a survey looking at how the COVID-19 has affected or has imposed ethical risk to the business. Out of all the correspondents, 90% of them said yes. So as you can see that we are dealing with an issue whereby now the workplace has shifted in such a way that it affected how ethically people behave in terms of their work relation and all that. Should we care about ethics? That's one biggest question. Should we care? Given the fact that people are dying, given the fact that I'm losing my job, given the fact that I have been subjected to isolation in terms of working from home, it is a question saying that should we care about ethics? Now, going through a number of theories and also reports, there are reasons why we should care about this ethics, and I define these reasons there. It defines who we are individually and as a society. Remember now that your ethical standard, it is not subjected to anything that is going around. Doing the right thing, whether anyone sees you or not, has nothing to do with how the external environment is changing. Secondly, being ethical provides one with a non-economical value. For example, the Mandela Day is coming. A lot of companies have taken this concept of Mandela Day as a way to do some community work, to give back to the community in honoring the former past president. However, as an individual, how do you gain from doing such activities? Before lockdown came, we would go out to orphanages, to disadvantaged homes, to do a little bit of painting or anything that is worthwhile to bring and add value to the lives of people who are less fortunate. That provided us with a non-economical value. So it is very important to understand that being ethical has nothing to do with materialistic things from an individual perspective. However, from a business perspective, it is all about reputation. It is all about making sure that what we do does not come back to bite us at the back. Contribution to the common well-being of the community. You must also remember that no man is an island. So as an individual, when you are working towards your ethical standpoint of view, you are also influencing other people who are around you. As a business, you must also take into consideration that whatever you do as a business, it affects your relationship with the community that you are participating in. And then lastly, it creates a pathway for a principle-based decision-making. When you are ethical, your thinking capacity is different. Your decision-making process, it is also affected by how your ethics are managed and how your ethics are measured through different situations that you find yourself in. Remember, I said that your external situation will not affect your ethical behavior. However, your decision-making will be different based on your ethical standpoint. So it is very important to also understand and take into consideration that this will create a pathway for a principle-based decision-making. So in answering the question, is business ethics or are business ethics still important during COVID-19? In simple answer, yes, it is. Because we understand that it brought a lot of change in how people conduct themselves in terms of ethical behavior and in relation to the business ethics that they had before COVID-19. Secondly, the 4 reasons that are outlined stands as a very solid ground for us to really care about ethics, because this informs who we are, informs how we contribute to the organizations, how we contribute to our economy, how we contribute to the global platform by being more ethical in how we conduct ourselves and do things. The second poll that we have is the one that says, do you think pandemic could lead to a better business ethic? On the next slide, we are dealing with that issue of the ethical dilemma. What can we do? Now that we understand that a lot of people are faced with difficulties, a lot of people are faced with situations that they are beyond their control, what do we do? So to a certain extent, one needs to understand that business or ethics, to a certain extent, are determined by how members of a certain organization sees and hear what their leaders do and say. But now, how do we get to doing that if we are on a pandemic? How do we get to do that if we cannot see each other? I think the biggest question to ask here is, how can the company impact the behavior of its employees? Now, this is a call, or it's a call to management. So through top level commitment and setting example, where managers are open to talk about the ethical dilemmas that they encounter and how these situations were resolved, this will provide or also help employees to talk and also provide a safe space for employees to speak up while they are working from home. So the employees must also be guaranteed to say that there's an open door policy. You are able to talk, and whatever you talk will be confidential and it will be addressed. There's a survey that was also done last year, October, 2020 October, in the Nordic countries, where they were asking people about talking and ethical behavior and all that. 65% of the respondents declared that even if they see something unethical happening, they will not report it. Why? Because they think that it will not matter to management. So this highlights to us that top management plays a very important role in setting those values that are critical to the employees, critical to the community, critical to other businesses, and critical to the global economy. Because if top management sets good values and they are a leading example in those, in living those values, it means then that the employees will have a safe space to speak up about how a lot of things are unethical and what can be done. However, since we know that it is not that easy to always have a conversation or interaction with top management, we have what we call a mid-level commitment. We must also take into consideration that a lot of employees will have interaction with their line managers compared to the CEOs and the CFOs of the company. So the line managers have an extremely important role in cascading the message of the top management to their teams, and even more important, walking the talk. But how can top management do that? Clarity. The first one, there must be a solid ethical business culture in place. How can they do that? They must firstly have a clear shared values. Values must be clear and they must be shared, meaning that it must be values that will bring change and satisfaction to all the stakeholders that I've been alluding to. Secondly, it must be inclusive. When values are set or the business culture is being transformed or changed, it must be an exercise that includes all employees in all levels, including the gardeners, including the security guards, because they must be able to understand how the values will impact their life and how the company cares about them. And then thirdly, top management, they must lead by example. You cannot say to people, you must care, you must respect and be honest in everything that you do. However, when it's tested on you as a management, that cannot be done. And then lastly, that will encourage that as we take decisions, it means that this ethical decision-making process will take into consideration all the stakeholders, their importance and the impact of this decision that we are taking. How will that impact on the stakeholders? Remember, when we have shared values and we are inclusive, it means that any ethical decision that we're going to make is going to be inclusive of all the stakeholders. So this is how we can try to solve this issue of ethical dilemma that the world is faced with. On the next slide, I'm also providing you guys with an ethical compass framework. This is what a company can also adopt in helping them understand how to take into consideration their ethical framework going forward. So this ethical framework is a 4-point or ethical compass, which looks at the purpose, people, power, as well as the principles. So on the purpose, the questions that should be asked are, what are the organization's fundamental reasons of being? Like, why are we here as a company? What purpose are we serving? Are we serving interest, or are you serving the community? That's the first question. Secondly, is people. Who are the constituencies to whom the company is responsible, who depends on success? What are the legitimate claimants and interests? Now here we are looking at your employees, we are looking at your business partners, you're looking at your government and other stakeholders. What is their interest in the company? To what capacity do they need us in order for them to succeed? So it looks back into what it is our goal and how do we make sure that we set objectives that will achieve those goals, taking into consideration that we are also saving our people in achieving our objectives. Second, the third one, it's about power. What we have realized lately is that power is not strength. And this brings me to the issue of saying that what is the organization's authority and the ability to act on certain situations and certain scenarios? You find a company that will divert from its goals and objectives now to use the authority and the power and the ability it has of resources to do certain aspects or certain projects that are not aligned to their goals and to their objectives, and not also saving their people. And then the last one is principles. What are the duties and responsibilities of the organization, as well as their aspirations and ideals? What do we want to achieve in the long run? Even if it means that the company or the founder of the company passes on today, what do we want to aspire to? How do we leave a legacy of ethical footprint for the next generation? Because we must also take into consideration that you are as good as your last response or thought. So what kind of thoughts do we want to leave in the minds of people that we serve? If people think about Milpark Education, what do they need to say years to come? If people think about ABC group, what do they need to think about in years to come? So those are some of the ways that we can use in order to take this issue of ethical behavior forward. On the next slide, I'm talking about the issue of ethical business culture. As part of ways of moving forward, I think this is one of the most important things that we have to consider as a company. Each company must create a very solid ethical business culture. This serves as an umbrella to shield the company from any forces that comes outside to attack the company and its ethical core. And then in doing that, it also nurtures the issues that are in the company, giving it an opportunity to be in the shade, to also get a little bit of sun and warmth, so that it nurtures those issues that companies face. I have some points here that I want to share, which will enhance the business culture of each company or an individual. And then the first one is that authenticity matters more than ever. So we're in a situation where people are scared, people are watching you, it is your staff, it is your consumers, it is your business partners. But if you fake it as a company, you hide it, it could have devastating results, which will affect the core of your company. You must communicate, and it must be clear, it must be as often as possible, and it must be as transparent as possible. You must note that you do not have answers to all the questions. However, you must deal with situation as it comes, because that will give you an opportunity to say that, yes, I acknowledge that this is a situation. However, at the rate of the way things are changing, even this situation might change anytime soon. So you must also take that into consideration: accountability and authenticity. Listen to what your people are saying. Not only people are watching, but they also watch how you act to what they said to you. You must look into what your stakeholders and what your employees are saying. Are you acting the way they wanted you? Are you acting to what they say? Are you responding to their cries? Are you responding to their issues? Are you ethical in your behavior in a conduct as a company in terms of that? Embrace continuous improvement. What COVID-19 has given us is an opportunity to improve what we have. So we must use that. The fourth one, trust the values you've already set. If you have followed the right procedures and you have shared values, it means that these are shared values, and no forces will be able to change that. So use what you have. Use the values that are already in place in order to build a solid and a concrete foundation moving forward for a clear business ethical culture. Number 5, always be saving. Even in these difficult situations, the most important thing any human being or any company can do is to save. Save your stakeholders to your utmost possible behavior. But in your saving, make sure that whatever you do brings ethical culture of the business in the forefront. Because if you do not lose your values, then you will not lose your stakeholders. The last one, which brings me back to the core of the presentation, it's pinpoint your purpose. What is your purpose as a company? Why are you here? What are you saving? Those are the questions that one should be looking at. And then on the next slide, we look beyond the crisis. Now that the crisis is here, and we know that it's going to pass like any others that passed, but what do we do from here going forward? Building that business ethical culture will create what we call ethical behavior and ethical decisions that will strengthen the reputation of the company. And then as the crisis passes, it means that we will be able to emerge as strong companies after that. The pandemic must also be used or serve as a catalyst for change. It provided us with opportunities to change how we do things. So let's use that. Lastly, organizations that commit to doing right, even when nobody is watching, will emerge from this pandemic stronger and more united. The last slide. I just want you to take these words and take care of them. Take care of your thoughts, because they will Build on your attitudes, and then that will also build on your words, your actions, your habits. Ultimately, they will change and shape your character, which will direct you to your destination. I would like to take this opportunity and say thank you. Back to you, Cyril.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Now we're going to go through our questions. Do we have any questions, Michaela?
Not yet, Samila. People can still submit them there. The Ask a Question facility at the bottom of the screen.
Okay. And while we're waiting for our questions, I'll hand over to Cyril to just do a bit of reflection and rounding off on our webinar this morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Samila. Yeah, thank you to Daniel for giving us a bit of a new approach and a fresh idea on how to approach ethical conduct within the workplace. I think it's very topical, and it is very important that we understand the importance of ethics. Now, it's strange that ethical behavior starts at home. You know, the foundation of how we conduct ourselves later in life starts with how we were brought up in the context of our homes, the type of discipline that was instilled in us by our mothers and our fathers, and the way we conducted ourselves within our own homes. Because that is where you learn what is right and what is wrong, and how you treat and how do you respond to people in the workplace. And I think the breakdown we see in society, the breakdown we see in our work life, stems from a shaken foundation in our home lives. And looking at the COVID pandemic, I don't think any of us would have realized, if you think of December 2019 at the Christmas table when you were sitting and having your Christmas dinner, would have thought that in 4 months after that, one of the greatest crises that we've seen in our lives would hit us and would change our lives forever. Because I don't think that after COVID-19, we can go back to the normal life that we know. COVID-19 has changed us forever. But we mustn't see it as a negative, even though it has devastating effects on each and every one of us. But we must find the positive in it. And therefore, it created a great challenge for the government, for business, and the community at large. But in the same vein, COVID-19 has also created a number of new opportunities, creative thinking that came out of how things can be done in a different way to what we are used to. Because, you know, as human beings, we have habit forming. And I think over the years, we have been in those strict lanes. You know, when you look at the racehorse, they have these little things that they call flappies. And those things are to guide you into a certain direction. And here came COVID, and COVID took those flappies away. And now we have a broader vision on what life is all about. So one of the 4 things that I've experienced in terms of COVID since last year is that we have seen greater cooperation across the board. Sacrifices were made. We are more flexible in the way in which we do things in order for us to meet our demands and our challenges at the end of the day. And by need to do it in a different manner. And by doing all these things differently, pops up the question of ethical conduct. So each and every sector in the broader sectors that Daniel referred to, if you take government had their role to play in this COVID-19 pandemic. But we've also seen at the height of the worst humanitarian crisis that we've seen in South Africa and across the globe, we have had our second wave of corruption, where PPEs, the very thing that was designed to protect the community of South Africa, has been used as a tool for the enrichment of people, which is not how ethical behavior should be conducted and ethical thinking people should conduct themselves in business. From a business perspective, we've seen the exploitation, all the necessary things that we require for the protection as well as preserving us as human beings, from vitamins to sanitizer, has shot up, right? So are we putting profits ahead of the well-being of the South African community, right? And then thirdly, we come to us, the human beings. We have had the privilege of working from home. And how do you conduct yourself? Do we need a big brother to look at us? Do we need to be on an electronic platform to show our companies that we are working? Or should it be an ethical responsibility from the individual to ensure that during my day, I need to give my company 8 hours of work? Do your 8 hours of work. And if you are wired correctly and your ethics and your morals is what it should be, you don't need anybody to stand and guard you and look over you, and do the right thing and do what you need to do to meet your outcomes on a daily basis. And on that positive note, I want to say thank you very much to everybody that have attended this webinar. I think from here on, let us think about the importance and the significance of ethical conduct. Before we say things, think about it. Before we act, think about the ramifications on what we say and how our behavior will affect other people. And that is crucial, because people judge us because of how we act and what we say. First impressions are lasting impressions, and we need to put that positivity into practice so that people can understand that even though they have a problem with you, you sort out that problem and you give them the assurance that they can still trust you as a company, as an entity, or as an institution. Right, so are there any questions, Samila?
There are no questions. I think Daniel has managed to bring clarity in all of us, and also really appreciate your words, Cyril. It's everything about ethics it's very important at this stage, and we need to ensure that we act in an ethical manner at all times. So if we have no questions, I'm going to thank everyone who has joined us this morning. Thank you, Daniel. It's been an informative session. Thank you, Cyril, for always driving and talking about all these amazing things. We really appreciate you. And everyone that has joined, thank you. We'll see you next time. And goodbye.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.